different.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin has spoken with his American counterpart Donald Trump and has offered his wishes for Christmas. According to the Kremlin, the Russian president is currently reviewing America's inputs on the peace proposal in Ukraine. The first American pontiff, Pope Leo, has given Christmas sermon where he has highlighted the plight of Palestinians in Gaza, asking worshippers to think of families living in tents exposed to rain and cold. He has also said a Palestinian state is essential to peace. An official at the SBU Security Service has said Ukrainian long-range drones hit oil product tanks in the Russian port of Temeryuk and a gas processing plant in Russia's Orenburg. Authorities say U.S. immigration agents were involved in a shooting in Glen Burnie, Maryland during an operation targeting two men alleged to be in the country illegally. Officials say the driver rammed ICE vehicles and drove at agents, prompting gunfire. 14 countries, including France, Britain and Germany, condemned Israel's approval of 19 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, warning the move undermines peace efforts and prospects for a Palestinian state. According to local authorities, at least 5 people were killed and 35 others injured when a suspected suicide bomber detonated explosives inside a mosque during evening prayers in Maiduguri, capital of Nigeria's Borno state, while so far no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Acting chairman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Tariq Rahman, has arrived in Dhaka after nearly 17 years in exile. He has emerged as a leading contender for Prime Minister ahead of the February 12 elections, as he was cleared of corruption and other charges after ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted. Saudi Arabia said it hopes Yemen's Southern Transitional Council will end an escalation after UAE-backed forces seized control of the southern provinces of Hadramaut and Mahara. Saudi Arabia said a joint Saudi Emirati military delegation arrived in Aden on December 12 to press for an urgent SPC withdrawal amid a Yemeni backlash over forced invasion of the Yemeni islands. And the viewers, the Kremlin says it is reviewing documents on ending the war in Ukraine. These were brought to Moscow by U.S. Special Envoy Kirill Dmitriev. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed the move Thursday. Peskov also commented on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's Christmas address. Zelensky urged citizens to pray even as he acknowledged private anger toward Russian President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, Russian President Putin has already sent Christmas greetings to U.S. President Donald Trump. Kremlin aides described the gesture as a polite holiday message from Moscow. All right, now Gilbert Doctor, who is a Russian affairs expert, now joins us in this discussion, and he's joining us from Brussels. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for joining me on this discussion. How do you view the latest statements that are coming in from either party as people around the world now are celebrating Christmas today?
Well, both sides are stalling for time. That is to say, well, 3 sides, the United States as well. The latest discussions in Miami, to the best of my understanding, and following upon information about Mr. Zelenskyy's guarded remarks backing what was achieved in Miami, suggest that, as before, the positions of the Russians and Ukrainians are incompatible, and therefore Mr. Trump's efforts cannot possibly achieve success. The additional complicating factor is that Mr. Trump himself does not enjoy backing on Capitol Hill and the American political establishment for what he is trying to do, because the United States remains deeply anti-Russian and unsympathetic to his efforts at accomplishing it a mending of ties with Russia, normalization to draw Russia away from China. These are complications which suggest that whatever we receive in the daily news about progress in the talks, it is all empty discussion.
But in the first place, do you really think it even merits a discussion, the fact that Putin has sent across a Christmas greeting to Trump? That's all in the spirit of good-meaning democracy.
Well, it's good that he sent a message because there was some debate, even within Russia, in the last couple of days, whether he should send any message. However, he did it, and that is a matter of civility. Unfortunately, Mr. Trump is not the friend of Russia that Mr. Putin would like him to be, not because of the personal disposition of Mr. Trump or of his emissary, Mr. Vitkov, but because Mr. Trump does not enjoy the backing of the political establishment. And so there's a very curtailed amount that he can accomplish when he doesn't have Congress at his back. And Mr. Putin is making believe that Mr. Trump is his friend and there's something to be achieved. I'm afraid that this is not going to end well, and it is not in Russia's interests or in our interests in the West for this to be dragged on, for the war to go on for 2 more years, because that keeps in power the tyrants who are the president of the European Commission, the vice president of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas. These people remain in power so long as there's no resolution of the war. And the same is true of Merz and Starmer and Macron, who enjoy record low popularity ratings, but will keep power if the war goes on. Therefore, it is incumbent on Mr. Putin to find a way to end the war without Mr. Trump.
Sure. Well, thanks for your comment, Gilbert. But do continue to stay on with us, please. Viewers, moving ahead, US President Donald Trump used his Christmas message to mix holiday greetings with sharp political attacks. Posting on his Truth social platform on Christmas Eve, Trump wished a Merry Christmas to all, including what he called the radical left scum, accusing political opponents of trying and failing to destroy the country. In the same post, Trump highlighted what he described as major achievements, pointing to strong economic growth, record stock markets, low crime levels, and a stronger national security posture. He also claimed that tariffs had brought trillions of dollars in prosperity to the United States. Trump closed the message by saying the country is respected again like never before. And now moving ahead, China has rejected the conclusions of a US trade investigation targeting its semiconductor industry and has strongly opposed plans to impose new tariffs. Beijing says that the US Section 301 probe into China's semiconductor policies is unjustified and politically driven. The US Trade Representative has announced new tariff measures that would begin at 0% and gradually increase within 18 months, with final rates to be decided before mid-2027. China says it has taken note of the move and has launched strong objections through the China-US Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism. Chinese officials warn the decision risks escalating trade tensions and harming global supply chains. All right, viewers, there's some more developments now coming in as far as the China-US trade is concerned. China now rejecting the conclusions of the US trade delegation that targeted its semiconductor industry, opposing plans to impose new tariffs. Beijing is now saying that the US Section 301 probe into China's semiconductor policies is unjustified and politically driven. China also says that it has taken note of the move and it has in fact also lodged a strong objection through the US-China Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism. In fact, Chinese officials have also warned that the decision risks escalating trade tensions and harms global supply chains. In fact, this is coming as a US trade representative announces new tariff measures that will be beginning at 0% and eventually going up to within 18 months, and the final rates would only be fixed by mid-2027. All right, I'm told I'll be joined by a senior guest here to get his opinion on this, and in fact I am joined in by Sharad Kohli, who's a senior economist and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you, Mr. Kohli, for joining us on Christmas, and I extend very warm greetings to you on the occasion. Talking about the issue at hand, China lodging protest over US's proposed tariffs that will be finalized by mid-2027. Do you really think, I don't know how to view this, should I say that the Xi-Trump meeting has actually delayed the implementation of the tariffs, or whether that meeting was only a short-term fix for the deteriorating trade tension between the two countries?
Well, Merry Christmas, Kriti, to you and the NewsX World viewers around the globe. Well, I think the October meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump was a quick fix solution. We all know that 10% tariffs were slashed, and 1 year was given on the export of rare mineral earths. But during the concurrence of this pact, during the concurrence of this quick fix solution, I really don't think it was appropriate for the US to highlight the sanctions, even if they were being imposed from middle of 2027, because when you're under a pact, you have to be careful to not to speak out things which are provocative. So I think it was a mistake per se, and I was just going through the trade pact. We have the trade data, bilateral trade between the top 3 countries that US does, about $900 billion of bilateral trade with Mexico. Canada comes second, and then China comes third, about $700 billion of bilateral trade in China as well. With all the 3 top trading partners, Kriti, there is some or the other issue going on. We all know what has happened between US and Canada when President Trump said we want to make it as a 51st state of the US. And then Mexico, it's an open secret as to what goes on between America and Mexico with regard to immigration, with regard to infiltration, and so on, so how Mexicans are being deported, and so on. So with all the 3 top trading partners of US, there is an issue going on which ideally, from an economic sense, should not happen, because you are exchanging goods at the highest volumes with these 3 countries. Forget about rest of the countries, although if I go on naming the issues with other trading partners, including India for that matter, I can probably burn up the rest of the time of your show. But I'm very surprised. I'm in fact flabbergasted, because President Trump's tariff policies, they've been going on since 2nd April now, the reciprocal tariff. But there has to be a borderline. There has to be a limit up to which you can stretch it. If you keep stretching it beyond the point, there is semiconductors which are going from the US to China. And now, it won't take long for China to copy those semiconductor chips and start manufacturing in the next few years within their country.
Exactly.
And as for the rare earth minerals, US knows that it cannot do without those rare earth minerals. It made President Trump and President Xi Jinping meet, despite the fact that tensions were high. So I'm very surprised, because when you're on a negotiating table, you have to maintain congeniality, you have to maintain cordiality, you have to make sure that the right atmosphere is there for any trade dialogue to happen. But somehow, during the concurrence of a pact, these kind of statements are being made. And I, for a moment, Kriti, if you ask me, I support the Chinese view, because they have been keeping quiet, they have been keeping low, and they have been quietly giving statements against what President Trump has been doing on them. But then if you try and stretch it beyond the limit, of course it's going to escalate the tensions, Kriti.
Do you think that Beijing's moves are now more aggressive than they were previously? And do you also think that the 2 countries, the 2 superpowers, might as well be heading for a war as far as the semiconductor and the chip industry is concerned?
But there is already a war, if you ask me. There is already a Cold War going on. It's been going on for years now. I mean, this is not the first time we're hearing of this war. It's been going on for long ago. So I think Chinese aggression at this point of time is quite understandable, because any trade pact, any bilateral pact cannot be one-sided. You cannot just make everything in your favor. In diplomacy, you have to balance things out. Let agree to somebody, also agree to something from your end as well. So I think if it's a one-way traffic, I really don't think it's worked. So for a moment, as I said, I'm not a big China fan personally, but then for a moment in this particular issue, I do support the Chinese contention because I've seen the US approach towards other countries as well, and this includes India. Not because I am from India and I am in New Delhi right now, so I am probably thinking of my own country. No, that's not the point. I have seen this happening with many other countries. There's been a bullying tactic. If you try and bully a country to do what US says, the times have changed. I think a new world order, a new economic order is already in place. It's not the time when US was the ultimate boss, which is still trying to imagine that it is. That's not the case anymore. I think the sooner US understands that, or the sooner, shall I say, White House understands that, the better it would be for them. Otherwise, as you rightly said, this war is going to get aggravated. This war is going to, and there are larger geo-economic issues. Why should we forget that? There is the Taiwan issue, which is a big issue. The South China Sea tensions, that's already simmering. Every time there is a threat from China on Taiwan, every time there is a military exercise done in the South China Sea, you find US ships on alert. So in a broader perspective, when the geopolitical tensions are already flared up, in the midst of that, when you try and add some more fire because of the trade tensions, I think it is obviously going to aggravate the things, not to everybody's comfort. Kriti.
All right, well, sure, I'd leave it at that. Thank you very much again, Sharat Kohli, for joining us here. And moving ahead now, viewers, Somalians turned out in large numbers on Thursday to vote in local elections in Mogadishu, marking the country's first election by universal suffrage in nearly 6 decades. The capital was placed under tight security, with thousands of personnel deployed amid concerns of militant attacks. Long queues formed outside polling stations as voters waited for hours to cast ballots, many for the first time in their lives. The vote is seen as a major step for Somalia, a country emerging from decades of conflict, Islamist insurgency and political instability. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud described the election as the future of Somalia, urging citizens to embrace democracy. Electoral officials said more than 500,000 registered voters were expected to participate. The polls will test the government's push for a direct voting, a move opposed by some regional states and key opposition parties who have boycotted the election, accusing the federal government of centralizing power. Let's listen in.
waxaan faraxsanahay runtii 50 sano ka badan doorashada ka socota maanta caasimadda ummadda Soomaaliyeed ee magaalada Muqdisho runtii waxaan halkaan u yimid oo sababka dheer aan soo galana waa in fursadda la siiyo aan ka faa'iideysano maadaama aan kamid ahay dhalinyarada caasimadda wax ku soo baratay ku soo barbaartay ku soo guursaday ka shaqeeya arrimaha bulshada waliba si gaar ah muddo dheer ka shaqeynayay in la isdoorto oo dadka reer Muqdisho ay runtii codkooda dhiibtaan oo xaqooda ay raadsadaan dadka runtii ku metelaya deegaanadooda
maanta waxaa meeshan i keenay waxaan rabaa inaan codkayga dhiibto aan ka codayo degmadan aan deganahay degmada Hodan aan u codayo ciddii igu matali lahayd degmadan anagoo ka gudbayna marxaladdii ahayd in loo soo magacaabo ciddii matali lahayd marka maanta waxay noo tahay maalin weyn oo taariikhiya in degmadan aan sabab kula jirno dadkii shacabkii xaafadan degnaa khaasatan shacabkii caasimadda.
And I now welcome retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, International Relations and Defense expert from New Delhi, to join us in the discussion here. Thank you, Dr. Kochar, for joining me again here at NewsX World. Surely a welcome step there in Mogadishu, also a milestone, for as it's having the first election with universal suffrage. But what do you think are some of the challenges that still need to be addressed?
Thank you, Kriti, and a very Merry Christmas to you and to all our viewers on NewsX World. You see, it's a very important question because Somalia, if you look at the history of Somalia all along these years, they've been undergoing a kind of a civil war, a civil unrest in the country. A large number of groups are fighting against each other, and there hasn't been a democratic kind of election for a number of years since 1991. So I think this is one attempt of the government to bring in a legitimacy into the elections, because one person, one vote is a very universal form of election, and right now it is being done in the local council elections, and later on in 2026 when the main election will come. I think that will be the bigger challenge, because right now it is limited to some 16 districts only, including the capital, and a total approximately 1600 plus candidates are there for the 390 seats. But uh, the bigger challenge is going to be that, in case, because this is a pilot project for the Somalian government, they want to see how it actually goes, and thereafter, in case the election rules have to be also modified, because that is the demand of the opposition, because opposition is rejecting this sort of a system, because normally Somalia has a clan-based election system, but for the first time, they're going to the people are going to elect their representatives. So opposition has some kind of a fear, because they think that the government is going to control the election. Government is going to manipulate the election. And a second aspect is the government has also not allowed any civil transport conveyance on the day of the election. They have said that government transport will be moving the people to the polling booths. So that is also you constraining factor, because a large number of people will get restricted to move and give their vote. So the first challenge is, if you want to do it as a pilot project, you must get at least 50% votes in of the total electorate. At least a voting percentage has to be more than 50%. Only then this kind of credibility will be there of these council elections. A second important aspect is that a direct vote, a decentralized governance, and accountability. These are the grassroots of any kind of governance. So I think with this new system, Somalia will move into a slightly better space with regard to acceptability of its leaders, and the uh, apprehensions of the opposition, which is basically they are actually worried that it will lead to power centralization in Mogadishu. That will have to be assuaged, because a kind of a transparent system of carrying out the election has to be formulated by the government. So we are all watching this. Challenges are immense. First challenge, if I can summarize it, the first challenge is to get sufficient number of people to vote in the elections, because it has to be more than 50%. Then there has to be a transparency in the entire process. The voting or the methodology of voting and the casting of votes has to be made very, very transparent. And third is that this movement of the people within the city and all would need to be decentralized, because right now it is too much of centralization here, and this may limit a genuine participation of the people. So I think these are the three major challenges which the Somalian government actually faces as of now.
Sure. Do you think also, I would want to ask you, the precedent that we've seen in other African countries are going to vote, especially in the north, the outcome is usually very heavily tilted towards one party. Then questions are raised about how transparent it is, whether the election process was free and fair. Do you think those challenges will still remain, and what really is something that can be done to address this?
A very good question, Kriti, because these challenges are there with every kind of election. Even in India, we have the similar kind of challenges. So, because you if you remember this SIR, this thing has been initiated, so people have been speaking a lot about that also. So, in case we discuss about Somalia, I think I would like to give a suggestion that why don't you involve the United Nations in the conduct of these elections? Because in case, there have been cases earlier also, and we have a UN peacekeeping forces in Somalia also right now, and in other countries, and they have been mandated earlier also to carry out the electoral process. Because what happens that in case a UN carries out the election, there is a degree of legitimacy, transparency, and acceptability. So I think this maybe because this is a local election, a UN may not be required here, but subsequently after the election is over, I think a lot many aspects will emerge, whether this election was free and fair, whether this election got the required number of voters to come actually forward and exercise their franchise, and the results will also convey a lot of meaning that whether the elections will be suitable to be translated into the general elections next year. So I would like to suggest to the Somalian government through your channel that in case they want a better acceptability of this entire process, after they formalize this process, after this pilot elections takes place in the local council elections, they must bring in the United Nations to carry out the general elections.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. Kocher, for joining us and speaking to us. And moving ahead, viewers, now Pope Leo XIV has called on Russia and Ukraine to show courage and engage in sincere, direct and respectful dialogue as international efforts intensify to end the nearly 4-year war. Speaking during his Christmas blessing, the Pope urged the international community to support renewed peace talks. The appeal comes as Russian and Ukrainian officials have held separate discussions with the United States negotiators over possible proposals to end the conflict that began with Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. In a rare political reference during a Christmas sermon, Pope Leo has also expressed deep concern over the humanitarian situation in Gaza. He lamented the suffering of Palestinians, highlighting that humanitarian aid remains insufficient despite an October ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The Pope, celebrating his first Christmas since his election in May, also spoke about the global homeless crisis and the devastation caused by ongoing wars. Later in the day, he is expected to address world conflicts further in his traditional Urbi et Orbi message. Let's hear.
Preghiamo in modo particolare per il martoriato popolo ucraino. Si arresti il fragore delle armi e le parti coinvolte, sostenute dall'impegno della comunità internazionale, trovino il coraggio di dialogare in modo sincero, diretto e rispettoso.
Il desiderio divino di incontrarci. Il Verbo ha stabilito fra noi la sua fragile tenda. E come non pensare alle tende di Gaza, da settimane esposte alle piogge, al vento e al freddo, e a quelle di tanti altri profughi e rifugiati in ogni continente, o ai ripari di fortuna di migliaia di persone senza dimora dentro le nostre città.
All right, viewers, with that, it's a wrap on World Report. But do keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.